Good evening, friends. I am back again. It is better to be said that it is coffee time. So let's have coffee together. And from allpoetry.com, me, Mr. Deepak Singh, with some of my poetries or some of my writings which I would like to discuss or I would like to make it out the way that how and what were the main purpose of writing those poetries and how the track so far has been in craft or how the tracks has been made on writing to such an extent in a compressed or in a such an extent of an level. Friends, today I will not be speaking too much of a higher frequency of a poetry which I already have last very currently written. The poetry which the current issue were of the very high terms. In the last video also I have spoken some of the lines of the poetries like bending of light, bending of neurotransmitter. Yes, it was indeed a very nice way of writing on a neurotransmitter, but or the neuroscience, what could be better said. But today I would be discussing some of my poetries which were long time back. Most probably, what could be said that it was 3 to 4 years back when I started writing my poetries, or when I started writing my views or the reasoning my views, reasoning my thoughts in the way of words or making out or garnering out the nurturing out the environmental clues or environmental log, what could be better said that the awareness log in me that inked into that types of writing. Maybe today I'm writing in some types of some particular subject of neuroscience or something very much in the fact that neuroscience is too much important, which I have thought that it is a very good subject to delve with about the neuroscience, as the authors and poets are too much on particular subject who are on the basis of neurology or on the process of psychology or on the basis of neuroscience. Uh, do even make on the issue of writing by their journals and way of making understanding, but in the terms of literature or in the terms of poetries, very not to that form, or the very meager writing almost are there. But that is not the important fact what I want to mention today. Today I would be discussing some of my poetries when that the particular writings or particular issue was not in that formation. Means what could be said that that was the feelings which are totally driven by or which has been emotional drives. At that time the emotion drive 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I'm writing poetry from my early childhood. I have a very innate way of writing my poetry, but though I have not got that much of published poetry so far yet to the any site or any blogging on the site of poetry. But when I started blogging on writing the poetries, I may got an issue of that, and to make the total ways of clearance of my emotions, that is the first most necessary that a writer or an author first get his clearance of his emotional factor first. It is very much necessary, because unless and until a writer or author in the sense get its clearance of its emotional factor, he may not to some extent be able to cope up, or he may not be able to reinforce his stature of his mind or his stature or the structure of his brain to that much extent to write about science or neuroscience or about the cosmology or about the mind and all those things. So the first most important thing is to conquer the emotional factors of any author or writer. So the reason behind it, or reason, what is the purpose of discussing this kind of talks or discussing this kind of poetries which I've started writing, and why trying to discuss this whole thing, because this is for the young writers or young authors who even start writing on their way, or writing to make out the possible way. It's necessary that whatever comes in his mind, or whatever emotional image he makes it out, he must construct it in a way of words, whatever be the possibilities, or whatever way of assembling it may be, or whatever be the condition of logic of the poetry, what could be said, the meter and all those things to be taken into account or not to be account, has to be not the important factor over here, but rather the important factor is that what the emotions are making on, how the person is strengthening his heart, or how he's uh, making on the reapproach to making his heart imbibe in it, so that to some extent he reached to such a point that his heart is in total controlled by his mind, to such an extent that he would be able to write to any extent. So this is generally for the budding authors or the budding writers who initiate themselves to write. And the first writing is not through, maybe what could I do understand, or I do better understand, I do think that according to my way of knowledge, is that to grasp the emotional virtue to such an extent, to grasp the emotional log, or to grab the emotional terminology to that an extent that he would compel himself, or he would tend himself to write or process the word, and to on the process of writing on and on and on and continuously, he reached to that point, or such a peak, such an extent that he could make out a great legacy, or he could make out a great amount of writing, great methods of writing, in the way to how he proceed on. So, I would be discussing my first poetry, which I have written in allpoetry.com. And the poetry was very simple poetry. It is with a poetry of 16 lines, with four lines stanza in each. Though there the rhyme, the poetry is in a rhyme form, but do have got an absence of meter in it. I mean, the poetic measure has got some folly over there. Do I admit that indeed there are the poetic meter, poetic scales have gotten folly, but I have never written my writings on the terminology, or on the possibilities of any poetic scales. I have written what I have felt and what I have understood by the extent of knowledge of my own perceptional log, which I attained to make on by the summation of my cognition log of my mind. So the poetry was like that. O life. The topic of that poetry was O life. Very interesting topic, that O life. What the means, what I would be saying, or what I would be meaning to speak it out about O life, means at that time how I would have been maybe discussing or speaking to my own self, or having a self talk to speaking about the life. So the life, oh life, is said like that, that the, oh, the pure subtle life, I praise you in every thrive. Thy huge mountainous soul to rule with simple actions and tools. So, as in the first four lines, has it said in a way that it is saying that life is totally pure. Means if you make it very pure, if you make it very way simple way of living, until and unless you make it rigor it out or wriggle it out, or until and unless you make any complex virtue of it, then it is a very simple life, is it? So, in that sense, it is said, in that sense, it is said that it's a pure, I and praise you in every tribe, is a pure life. And in that sense, the acclamation, the acknowledgement that it is so good, that means I am enjoying. I am, I am in the way that it is giving me lots of enjoyment, whether there are troughs or there is a crest over there, but enjoyment is still there in the adventure of the life. And the third line, I say that thy huge mountainous soul to rule. That means that in the poetic sense has to be said that though it is a huge mountainous soul to rule, that means though it seems to be very stiff, it seems to be very hard, it seems to be very difficult, though the enjoying those difficult moments, or enjoying those difficult terms, enjoying this mountainous soul has to be taken in a metaphor, would be said in simile, that it seems to be, it is indeed seems to be very hard, that it would not be possible to deal with it, not be possible to make out of it. But yes, indeed, there are ways, if has to be gone on or to be taken into as an adventure of that, with simple actions and tools. The fourth line very nicely integrated that, which has got a very simple action. So the actions, the way of actions has to be very simple. What does it has to be mean said to be here? The simple action has to be said that to be in itself, to be in oneself, to be unbothered of the phenomena of whatever the flux cutting syndromes, or whatever the flux cutting methods may be bothering of are. So, with simple actions and tools, the tools of the nature itself has got his own way of professing its uh, impediments to all of us. So, this in the first four lines, as it is say, "Oh, the pure subtle life, I praise you in every thrive, the huge mountain of soul to rule with simple actions and tools." So, the second stanza, I said, "And what are the lovely owls, with happiness and melancholy stitches in all." So the second stanza, first line, it is said that what are the lovely owls, means what are the lovely methods, what are the beautiful methods. So the methods, or the process of how the inculcation of ways, the path, the drives that are all made on through. So how well it is been made on. So what happiness and what melancholy stitches in all. So in that there's the happiness and even melancholy. This is all stitches up. So my friend, you please go through the poem. It is in allpoetry.com, and it has a tag with an Artiii The Jyoti, and written by me, Deepak Singh. You please go through the poetry and enjoy it. Thank you very much.